Thank you, Srijana. All right, we are so excited today. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Just really excited today to host Bobby Brannigan from Embry Riddle Aeronautical University, which is a total mouthful. And he is the Associate Director of International Admissions, and just really excited for this topic today, understanding the landscape, especially this post test optional world that we're living in. And of course, testing keeps changing all the time. So without further ado, Bobby, we will turn it over to you in a second. Usually we have people enter questions in the chat as they come up, and we'll get to those at the end. And yeah, let's see what happens. Go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. So as Melissa said, I'm Bobby Brannigan, the Associate Director for International Admissions, and this is my university name, Embry Riddle Aeronautical University. Like she said, it's definitely a mouthful, but I would, at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a little bit more information about my institution. And that way, you can definitely ask questions about my specific institution. But yeah, like she said as well, please enter questions into the chat. I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to enter them during the presentation, and I will do my best to answer them if Melissa is not able to. All right, so kicking it off, just thinking about what is test optional. So test optional means that it is optional for you to submit your test scores. So test scores can be standardized tests. It could be the SAT, the ACT. It could be a standardized test, maybe in your home country curriculum. So everywhere has a little bit of something different. So test optional for institutions here in the US means that you could submit your scores or you don't have to submit them. So typically we say, if you do very well on your test, say your SAT or ACT, please submit those scores because that could only potentially help your application. But in some institutions, and I'll explain as well, they just don't require it at all. So it might not change the landscape of your actual student file. So nearly 1,700 universities are currently test optional, and obviously that's definitely changing and continuing to change because of everything that we're going through this pandemic. A lot of admission requirements have been able to change and be a little bit more accessible to students. The really cool thing is that the SAT is actually going fully virtual. So you're going to be able to, still go to an SAT center or have the SAT test administered, at a testing center somewhere, whether that be your school or, a college board SAT center, but it's going to be fully virtual. So no more pen and paper or pencil rather. So that's really exciting. So that's going to be rolling out actually next year internationally. So it's going to go international first, and then it'll come to the US year after that. So which is pretty cool. Fairtest.org, this is a good website to go to just to kind of understand what tests are available and what tests may be required for institutions here in the US. All right, and then what is test flexible? So test flexible is when they're pretty flexible on a test. Maybe they still require a standardized test, but it could be the SAT in lieu of the ACT or vice versa. Or again, it could be a test that maybe is administered in your home country, whether that be Bhutan or whether that be somewhere else. So being test flexible, again, you just need to reach out to the institution to determine, do they still require a test? And if so, what test would they require? It could be a list of 10 tests. It could be a list of 2. If they're still test optional and they're test flexible, then again, you just kind of have your pick of which test that you would want to submit if you would want to submit a test. All right, so when we say it, we do mean it. So test optional does mean it is optional for you to submit your test. So please do not think that it's a requirement. We're trying to be sneaky in any way. So when institutions say that we are test optional, again, that's basically what it is. You pretty much we'll be looking at other things. And again, in the next slides, I'll kind of go over what we will be looking for during the admission process if we don't require those tests. So should you submit them anyway? As I alluded to, if you do really well on the test and you want to submit your test scores, please do. We would love to see them. And again, it could enhance your application. If there's no test, then what are you looking for? It's a great question. So there's different types of academic reviews that our institutions in the US have. There's over 4,000 of us, and we're all a little bit different. So just kind of thinking about that and what it means. for you to be a student at our institution. Again, could be something different for every single type of institution. So the first type of review is going to be the comprehensive academic review. So as you can see, we're going to be kind of looking at your academic performance. It's based on the school's curriculum and your academic background. So your specific school that you are attending, that's kind of what we're going to be looking for in terms of the comprehensive academic review. Do you fulfill our course requirements? So say for engineering or technical degree programs, do you have a background in algebra, trigonometry, chemistry, physics? That's kind of what we're going to be looking for specifically in the comprehensive academic review. So we are trained to understand the context of various curricula. So whether it be a national curriculum, IB, AP, external exams, different grading scales, all different types of things. So that's basically what we do in our job, as well as we look at and evaluate transcripts in different curriculum from around the world. Do not translate or convert grades to the US grading scale yourself. That's what we are here for. Otherwise, we do have forward credential evaluation services, but many institutions are able to do that. So we ask the student not to do it, but if the institution does and then submits the transcripts to us, that's perfectly fine. You can provide additional context as well, like a school profile. So maybe this says what the SAT or ACT average scores are, or what the average GPA is for the students. It could be things like what your curriculum is all about. So if on your transcript it just says math, we want to know what specific subjects you're learning in math each year. It could also say, the medium of instruction is English, so that would help with your language proficiency scores, those types of things. And then in terms of this comprehensive academic review, most admissions officers do read applications from home. So we're basically evaluating the transcripts, looking at your academic background, and seeing if you are a good fit for the institution just based on your academic performance. All right, the next one's going to be a holistic review. So as it kind of sounds, we're looking at you as a whole. So we're looking at your different challenging coursework. Did you take advanced classes? So again, that's on the academic side, but we want to make sure, if you are taking those advanced classes, that you'd be a good fit for whatever program it might be. So if it's a business program that you're trying to go into, or a more non-technical program, maybe we're not going to really be looking at what types of challenging courses that you've taken, but what would fit into your business curriculum here at the institution. Leadership. So do you have any leadership skills or abilities? Are you part of, say, student government or clubs or organizations on your at your high school? Or do you have volunteer work? Do you work somewhere, say a family business, and you're able to maybe be in a supervisor role, or you help others, whatever it may be. So it could be some sort of a leadership component to your application file. Involvement, again, what are you involved on? Do you have involvement, again, at school? Are you part of school projects? Do you have, again, that volunteer work? Are you involved in the community? Are you involved maybe in sports, whatever that may be? So we're looking for that as a whole. And then a personal statement, essay, an interview, those types of things. So you can write a personal statement. Basically, it could be a story. It could be something about you specifically. So it could be why you want to study at that specific institution. What makes you a good fit, right? So what have you achieved in your academics so far? And then what are you hoping to achieve, and how are you going to be successful once you come to our institution? Many institutions do not require interviews, but sometimes you can request an interview. Obviously, everything is digital now and virtual, so there's not a problem going into requesting some sort of meeting, whatever that may be. Although it's not required, maybe that's something that we're able to do. Sorry, I'm so muted. In terms of applying, make sure that you apply broadly. So if you're applying to a reach school, which is one of those tippy top schools, maybe it's an Ivy League school, right? Or maybe it's one of those schools that you really, really want to go to. Maybe they have admission requirements that are a little bit out of many people's leagues. So maybe they require a 1600 out of 1600 on the SAT, or maybe they require, a 4.0 GPA, all these different types of classes. So if you're applying to reach schools, also apply to other schools that meet your competitive academic profile as well. So kind of looking at what you're good at. If you're really good in math and sciences, then you can reach out to other institutions that have math and science programs. Maybe they're highly ranked, maybe they're not, but maybe they have really good resources. So check out, what they have available at the institution. institutions, and what they're able to offer you as a student. So just make sure that you're applying broadly. So financial aid and scholarship competitiveness, it could be completely different at each institution, which it mainly is. Some only have merit-based scholarships, some have merit and need-based. Some are able to give specific institutional scholarships, such as I am welcome, or you are welcome here, and Women of Excellence awards, College of Engineering, business programs, those types of things. Scholarship competitiveness does go into that and factor that into your application process. Unpredictable holistic review. So the holistic review process, it could be unpredictable. We could be looking at, again, essays. We could require an interview. Maybe we're going to require recommendation letters at some institutions. Some of them maybe not. Maybe we're just going to be looking at your academics and 2 recommendation letters. So just thinking about the different types of institutions that you are applying for. And again, maybe test scores are going to be part of that, and maybe they won't. Have a backup plan when your first choice does not work out. So avoid having to rely on the wait list. So nobody wants to be on a wait list. And that might not guarantee that you even get into that institution. Maybe some people are on a wait list for, say, a fall semester, and then they just have to automatically get bumped over to the spring or even the next fall. So you don't want to put your college career on hold just because you're applying to an institution where you might be put on a wait list. So just thinking about, don't be put on a wait list, have backups, make sure that you are able to secure admission to, maybe your top 3 institutions, and then you can, start your college career there. Limit your number of applications as well, because you don't want to submit applications to too many places. Also, it typically costs money to submit applications to 2 places. So I know that there's something called the common application, or the common app. You can submit all your documents to this one centralized location, and then you can send out your application to many different types of institutions. So in terms of the common app, though, not every institution requires it or even accepts it. So institutions like Embry Riddle, we don't accept the common app. You would just apply directly to our institution's website. But limiting the number of applications means that you're not spreading yourself too thin as well. So, just making sure that you're sitting down with your counselor, sitting down with your teachers, kind of determining, what institutions you want to apply for. Again, looking at their test optional or test flexible requirements, and then looking at their other requirements as well. All right, so in terms of different types of admission, guaranteed admission is a thing. So in terms of guaranteed admissions, if you meet the minimum requirements, then you are guaranteed admission. Sometimes that can include test scores, and sometimes it does not. So in terms of guaranteed admissions, it's based on meeting the minimum admission standards. It could be GPA. Mostly it's GPA, but some institutions will be looking at those different test scores as well. So if they're not test optional, or if they're not test required, then they might be test optional. Again, you can be guaranteed admission solely based on your high school GPA. So different types of guaranteed admission do happen with institutions. Even most community colleges in the United States have guaranteed admission. As long as you apply, basically you're going to be admitted. The cool thing about community colleges is that they don't require tests. So no matter what, you never have to submit SAT or ACT tests or any other standardized tests. You can begin at a community college, which is typically a 2-year institution, and you can complete your 2-year associate degree, and then you can transfer to a 4-year degree program at a university or a college outside of that 2-year community college. Another cool thing about community colleges, and that they are never test required, is that they sometimes have transfer articulation agreements. So what that means is that you're guaranteed admission to another 4-year institution once you submit all your documents and everything, once you complete your requirements at that community college. So beginning at a community college here means that you're guaranteed admission to a 4-year degree program at this other institution. Just meet all the minimum requirements during your time there, and then you never have to submit test scores anyway. So that's another way that you're able to have guaranteed admission to an institution in the US. All right, so in terms of other things, what we're looking for if you do not submit any test scores. So it could be essays. So essay topics, don't do my COVID story, please. We read hundreds and hundreds of essays. As you can imagine, the COVID has hit everybody differently. However, generally, a lot of students will kind of write about the same thing. What you could do is do a twist on it. So your COVID story could be how you overcame something during COVID, not specific to COVID, but maybe something during this time, during the pandemic. Yes, we understand shifting to virtual, but maybe that could have opened up a different door. So maybe that got you, I don't know, into internet programming. And then, that would be something specific that you could write an essay about. You can be authentic. So make sure that you're authentic to yourself. Don't put a lot of fluff in there. Be personal as well. So make sure that you are giving some personal touches to it. So how you were thinking, how you were feeling, what you had to overcome and how you overcame it, and then be creative. So just think about a little bit, about what you potentially would be able to do and what you have been able to do in terms of creativity. So adding those little creative components to it really makes it easy for the reader to become involved in the piece and then want to read the essay. So if the essay is supposed to be, 200 words, make sure that you stay under that, which that is a very short essay. So typically they'll be like 1,000 words, but make sure that you stay within those lines. Make sure that you're trying to be very creative, like from the get-go, to hold the reader's attention. Because like I said, we read hundreds of essays and we want to make sure that we get through the entire essay versus kind of stopping maybe midway through it, depending on what was in there. So even if it's about tests, so you wanted to really take the SAT test and you weren't able to, you can kind of explain that. All right, so in terms of being test optional or test flexible in the US, looking at scholarships. So many times scholarships, in terms of receiving a scholarship, tests are still required. So that's a big thing to kind of think about. So are scholarships more competitive with tests or without tests? Again, it depends on the institution. Sometimes they are, most times they're not. So if an institution is truly test optional, then scholarships may not be more competitive if you do submit test scores. Again, out of 4,000 institutions, we're all a little bit different. So just kind of making sure that you're reaching out to the institution specifically and talking to them about their requirements. So seeing, what the pros and cons may be of submitting your test scores. Is the SAT or ACT required for scholarship? So at some institutions, yes, and even still now, it is. However, I know a lot of institutions like Embry Riddle have been a little bit more flexible. Typically in the past, we have required the SAT or ACT for merit scholarship. If you're able to take it, definitely take it and submit it. However, we have been able to speak with financial aid and kind of, talk about what is going on in the rest of the world versus just here in the US. And so we're being advocates for our international students. If you don't have access to the SAT or ACT, we'll still be able to review you for admission based on your GPA. Scholarship, because for admission, we don't require those tests. If there are budget cuts, does that mean there's less scholarships? So in terms of the budgeting and scholarship, in the US institutions, it's a little bit different. So a lot of our scholarships come from private donors. So maybe their budgets have been cut, and so they're not necessarily providing scholarship to the US institutions that they're donating to. But sometimes, most of the time, they're not. So they know the value of the scholarship. They know and are committed to that scholarship fund. So again, a type of scholarship here at Embry Riddle is called the Women of Excellence Award. So we have a private donor that donates money every year to keep this fund alive, and we provide a scholarship to women to come and study at our institution because we take pride in women that want to come and study STEM programs, which is pretty cool. We have another one that's specific to the College of Business. So there is a private donor in the College of Business, and then they want business students to receive an additional scholarship to be successful in their college. So I think that in terms of the need-based scholarships that come from federal money, or however the institution is able to provide their different budgets, there could be less scholarship at some institutions, but mostly it's not going to affect the scholarships. They're still going to want to provide scholarships to the students to reward them for their academic success and to show that they want them at the institution. So thinking about scholarships, still do your research on scholarships. External scholarships are available as well, and you're basically able to stack those scholarships. So again, every scholarship requirement might be different. You might have to submit an essay or a personal statement, volunteer work. It could be a blog. maybe it's just, submitting an application to the institution and then you're automatically considered for a scholarship. So again, you don't require tests for scholarship consideration at many institutions, but again, it's different for every one of them. So make sure that you are reaching out to each one and kind of determining what their requirements are. All right, so in terms of submitting the applications, what if you want to take a gap year and defer your admission? So that is a definite thing. So as you can see here, you can do plenty of things in your gap year, right? You can surf Instagram, Facebook, any social media, TikTok, make some videos, or you can play Pokemon Go, which is what I do. So, taking a gap year to defer your admissions is not a huge deal for institutions. So many students in many countries do that. Everyone is a little bit different. So maybe you want to take a year to get to know yourself a little bit better. Maybe you need to work at the family business. Maybe you want to volunteer, go travel, whatever it might be. You're able to take a gap year and defer your admission. This is typically free for students. So you typically don't have to reapply if this happens. So we just defer your admission up to 1 year. You're able to do whatever you need to do in that year time. And then, you would just resume your admission decision, and then you would actually come to the institution and begin your academic studies. So different gap years for different institutions. So say that you've gotten a scholarship, typically your scholarship will move with your admission as well. And we won't require, additional tests, maybe placement tests for registration, but that's about it. So just thinking about taking a gap year, you're definitely able to do that during your admission time. And then will universities remain test optional? This is a huge question that everybody's been asking. So yes, a lot of institutions have moved to being permanently test optional, which is great for students. As well as us, so we don't have to worry about another checklist item on your application, and it saves money, it saves time, saves energy. But some institutions will resume requiring tests, and some of them already have. So it just kind of depends again on the institution. But many institutions are leaning towards looking at a different type of review, like the comprehensive academic review or the holistic, which are other aspects of your application file versus just a test. So standardized tests aren't the same everywhere. They are standardized. However, basically, students will do a lot of prep for it. It could be a year, it could be 2 years of prep. There's pre-SATs and pre-ACTs that you're able to take. So I think that institutions are seeing a little bit more about changing their admission practices to be more of that holistic or comprehensive review versus specifically requiring the tests. So a good time to apply now means that, just look at the academic deadlines. Typically students are able to apply in their last year of high school. Even if they're going to take a gap year, definitely apply, work with your institution, your high school to submit your application materials, and then just get to know your admission counselor at any institution that you're thinking of applying to. We're here to help you, and so don't be afraid to reach out to us as well. So all right, and that's basically what I have for test understanding test optional in the US. I do have a short slide about Embry Riddle, and then I left a lot of time for Q&A, it looks like.
Bobby, can I ask one question about just English proficiency tests that you use before we do?
Of course.
Yeah. Just, what is kind of right now for Embry Riddle, what English proficiency are you looking for?
Yeah, so in terms of English proficiency, we require the TOEFL, which is a minimum of 79, the IELTS, which is a minimum of 6.0, or the Duolingo, which is minimum of 105. If the high school is being taught in English, if the student attends for all 4 years, then we do waive that language proficiency requirement, as long as that's stated somewhere in the transcripts, that the medium of instruction is English, then we'll be able to waive that. But, yeah. All right, awesome. All right, so let me pull this up really quick, sorry. My computer froze. Sorry. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Embry Riddle. So we are the world's oldest and largest fully accredited institution that focuses on aerospace and aviation. So we were established in 1926. So that's very few years after the actual first flight took place, about 10 years previous to that. We do have campuses located in Florida and Arizona, as you can see on the map. We also do have a small campus in Singapore. They have about 10 different degree programs. And then we do have an online worldwide campus as well. So which is actually ranked #1 by US News and World Report for bachelor degree programs online. So our institution does focus on STEM programs. We're well known for our engineering majors, including our #1 ranked aerospace engineering program, as well as civil engineering, electrical and computer, mechanical, software engineering. If you wanted engineering, we pretty much have it for you. We do have aeronautical science, which is our professional pilot program, where we have over 100 instructional aircraft on each of our campuses here in the United States. Many programs are housed in the first of its kind College of Security and Intelligence. That's at our Prescott, Arizona campus. And then we do have business programs as well. So overall, we offer over 80 degree programs from the associate level, which is that 2-year degree program, to the bachelor level, which is a 4-year program. And then we do have graduate and PhD or doctoral programs. Our student to faculty ratio is about 24:1. So those small class sizes allow you to engage in that practical knowledge and get that one-on-one time with your professors as well. So we do have over 100 labs and facilities on our campuses, which includes such things as an ethical hacking lab, which is pretty cool, aircraft simulators, space flight operations, and even games and simulation. If you want to get involved on campus, we have over 300 different student clubs and organizations on either one of our campuses as well. Basically, if you're interested in something, you're able to be involved in that on campus. We have students from all 50 states and over 140 different countries. So we're very diverse. We're about 20% international students on our Daytona Beach campus. And then we're about 10% international at our Prescott, Arizona campus as well. So we are a guaranteed admission institution, so we do not require test scores for admission. So we're going to be looking at your academics. We're going to be looking at, again, if you're interested in, say, an engineering program or one of our more technical programs, we're going to look at your background in math and science, so algebra, trigonometry, and then we're going to be looking at physics and calculus, those types of things as well. If you don't have a background in that, we'll just have to look to see specifically what you have learned and studied, and then we can make a decision based on there. We do have a still exploring option for, say, the engineering program. So if you want to go into engineering, but you don't have that background, you're able to complete the still exploring foundation year for engineering, and then you're able to declare whatever specific major that you would like. We are test optional again for admissions. However, we do technically require the SAT or ACT for scholarship and merit-based scholarship consideration. However, like I said, we've been able to speak with our financial aid department and have them review international students. If they're not able to take the SAT or ACT, they can still receive a merit-based scholarship. Is it going to be the same amount as if you submit the SAT or ACT? It might be a little bit less. However, they're still pretty competitive. So I think that, there's not going to be much of a difference, because we're going to just be looking at your academics. And then we are NCAA Division II for sports. So if you're interested in competing collegiately, then you're able to speak with one of our coaches, go through the NCAA Eligibility Center and see if you're able to be recruited, and then you can secure a scholarship that way as well. Yeah, and I think that that's about it in terms of Embry Riddle. And then, yeah, I just left some time for Q&A. So, Melissa?
I just want to ask, I'm sure people might have some other questions, but I would say, like, in terms of, and this is a very long-term unknown question, but I would say for students in Bhutan who have been through series after series of lockdowns and not being able to access standardized testing, the Duolingo English test is amazing. However, the idea that Bhutanese test centers will be able to get up to speed with the computer-based testing for College Board anytime soon, I don't know. And I would assume that, your office would continue to, if you get applicants from Bhutan, be able to read those applications in the context of that. And I mean, would you agree that that's a good piece of information to put in additional information?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, in every application on the Common App, or whether you're submitting an application on our website, there is that additional information section. And I think that that's great information to put in there. Even if there's something that shows, because a lot of times we do try our best to, realize and understand what's going on in other institutions and other countries, when we do receive applications. So, if we see patterns and those types of things, then that's definitely something that we're able to bubble up to leadership, and they're able to, kind of agree on, because, the limitations of the students are definitely not their fault. These obstacles are coming up more and more, and we are being a little bit more understandable. So I think that, yeah, that's definitely something that should be brought up, to say, hey, unfortunately, this is, again, now, like you said, the third lockdown that you guys have to go through. I'm so sorry that you do have to go through that. But yeah, we're definitely understandable. I think that most institutions in the US will be. And if not, then it's their loss, honestly.
Yeah, I think in this kind of, it leads back to what you were saying at the beginning, for a student who hasn't had access to testing, at all, and maybe they would be a really strong test taker, looking at the other parts of the application. And I see a question coming in, I'm going to get to that, but I think looking at the other parts of the application, I will say, and Bobby, you probably agree, I mean, the classes that you took and how you challenged yourself and how well you did in those classes will always be the thing that people, how you've invested in your academics over time is still going to be extremely important, and where you took your knowledge outside of your school curriculum, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it's very important for students, during their high school, to really think about, what they want to do post high school. So if you want to come to somewhere like Embry Riddle, you want to study STEM, you want to study engineering, look into different types of math and science courses in your college. See if you have a competitive club or some sort of an engineering, program there. So I've seen, many institutions, in terms of high schools, have, say, like a rocketry club, or something really cool like that. And so they go to competitions, or maybe it's just something that they do for projects during their time in high school. So that would definitely go a long way, not only with the college and maybe your program coordinator, because every degree program has a program coordinator that writes up the curriculum. They, basically like are the ones that, if you have any questions about that specific program, they're the ones to reach out to. But not just for them, but for potential employers as well. So you'll be able to take, the great things that you've done in high school, push them towards enhancing them during your university and college career. That could lead to internships maybe in your first year at college, because you already have that experience, and you're not just a standardized test, you're a whole person. So looking, again, at those great things you're able to do, just stay involved and definitely push and challenge yourself. Again, even if it's business, so if you have, a class president and whatever that may be, get involved with those different types of things in high school, and that would definitely help out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like teaching and tutoring others, like teaching young people, tutoring young people in subjects that you're really good at, shows that you are investing in others and in something that's interesting to you. Okay, sorry, I'll get to the question. And I think I would love to hear your answer, and reasonable people differ on this one, but even if the unis say that they are test optional, are the applications still viewed without bias for students who prefer not to submit their scores? Which, such $1 million question. I love it. I'd love to hear your answer first.
All right. So yeah, I think that this is a great question. Definitely continue to pose this to institutions that say that they are test optional. So at least at Embry Riddle, we are test optional. Whether you submit SATs or ACTs or not, we're looking at your application without those scores. Basically, we're going to be looking at you in terms of your academics. So we're, yes, we're going to be looking at it without bias, basically. But the flip side of that is that we kind of pull in a little bit more of a holistic review as well. So say that you struggled in math. We're going to kind of look at, did you submit test scores? If you did submit SAT scores and you did amazing in math, so you're an amazing test taker, but you struggled a little bit in your curriculum, maybe that will kind of give you a little bit of push. I would say that we use the standardized tests as more of, it could be like a guide or maybe like a recommendation letter. So for you, so if you have a great recommendation letter from your professors in math, we might be able to use that in conjunction with your math scores to kind of see where you struggled and, if you would be a good, candidate for that program. Just like we're looking at your SAT scores to say, okay, they actually do know this math and they could be very good. So maybe we'll take that into account. I know it's kind of like a confusing answer, but we try to look for.
Yeah. No, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, we try to look for other ways, that we're able to enhance that application and, those academics. But, in terms of what we do originally, we are test optional. We're not even going to be looking at test scores if you submit them. We're only going to be looking at your academics that you submit.
Yeah. I would say in general, if you have, my best advice is if you have access to testing and you can take it and you do well on it, then it can be something that's additive for scholarships, just like Bobby has been saying, and I think this is very similar to a number of what we would see for US universities. So I don't think that if you have access to it, it's a good idea to try if you can. But frankly, some people just might not, even for the next year, have access to tests. So, and that's when you do want to rely more on doing your best in school and, leaving no stone unturned when it comes to exploring things that are interesting to you. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Any other questions?
Yeah, they're great questions so far.
Yeah, I love it. While we'll give it just a minute or two, Srijana is going to post a reminder in the chat for the link to our YouTube channel, the Global Shapers Timpu Hub. This is where we put all of our recordings and we share information afterwards so that students can have access to this in the future. So Srijana will share that link again, so you have previous presentations. And then, of course, we still have our upcoming March, April, and May presentations on a number of different topics. So stay tuned for those on our social media channels. We are Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. What am I forgetting? YouTube. We have our little platform that we use too. Okay, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to shout them out now. You can type them in. Bobby, thank you so much for sharing your information. And of course, students, if you have any, you're doing some research on Embry Riddle after this presentation and you have some interest in this institution, I would definitely recommend you reach out to Bobby. I don't think he probably has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students from Bhutan reaching out. So I would imagine he would assume you might be connected to this presentation, which would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to take the silence as all good.
Everybody's good. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much again.
Take care. All right.
Of
Thank
course.
you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.